The Ascher McLaren wheels are finally available, at least the wireless version. Is it worth a long wait? Let's find out. The usual disclaimer first, this wheel was provided by Simrace Shop as a loaner for the review. Thank you very much for that. Definitely make sure to check out Simrace Shop for all your sim racing needs, at least if you're in Europe. But of course, as always, all the opinions and thoughts are my own. So we'll start with the price, 1,169 euros, so definitely on the more expensive side. There's also a sport version for 839 euros that has no rotary switches on the front and only 2 shifters. And when you take the wheel out of the box, it's the typical Ascher quality and design language. I always like to call it like designed by an engineer. Very basic and minimalistic look. I like it. This also is a kind of heavy wheel at 1,520 grams, which gives a nice feeling of quality when you have it in your hands. I mean, at that weight, I wouldn't recommend to pair it with a weak wheelbase, but since this is the wireless version that only works with Simocube wheelbases, this is irrelevant anyways. But if you get the USB version, I would pair it with a base that has at least like 15 Newton meters. Something I found a little bit disappointing on first impression are the logos. Never been a fan of 2 logos on the front, you know it by now, and it's just some sort of very basic looking cheap print. I don't know, it just doesn't look very pretty and it's not really worthy this premium wheel in my opinion. But we'll start with the basic specs. We have an aluminum body with rubber grips, 300mm of diameter. The wheel is bigger than the older Ascher wheels. We do have 14 RGB buttons on the front. 2 rotary switches, we have 4 thumb encoders, 2 funky switches, and if we look at the back, we have 4 shifter and 2 clutch pedals, and it's available as a wireless version or as a USB version. And as you can see, this wheel now features RGB. As of today, filming the review, the USB version is not available yet. You can only get the wireless version. I don't know what takes them so long to make the USB version. But it's not on the market yet, but it's promised to be delivered in Q2 this year. But yeah, if we have a closer look at the front side, we do have 14 of these RGB push buttons with static lighting. You can set the color via SimHub, but it cannot react to telemetry in this wireless version. I don't think it's a big problem, but if you want the disco lighting while driving, you need to wait for the USB version. The buttons have a rubbery feel to them with a good tactile feedback at the end of the travel, and it feels very similar to the buttons that you had on the old F64 wheels, and the activation force for them is roughly 7.5 Newton, which is relatively high. One thing that is unique for this wheel, you can swap out the button caps. For that you need to remove this plastic cover on the front and the knob for the funky switch. Let me quickly do that. And now this plastic part just comes off and you have access to the buttons. And then in the box you get little tools that look like this. And what you can do is like grab the button with this. Let's, for example, take the DRS and just pull it up and the button will just fall right off. And then it comes with tons of buttons in the box. For example, this Mark button. If your name is Mark, you can use it. And basically all you do is like center it. There's no, you can basically put them on in any direction you want. So make sure you align it before pressing it on and then just push it down with a little bit of force. And you're good to go. Now we have a Mark button. Unfortunately, I do have a few buttons in the box that will just not fit. I mean, it will fit perfectly fine on the button, but once you install the button guard, you can basically press the button once and then it will be stuck in the on position. I did talk to Ascher about this and apparently this is a problem of the first batch. And in the meantime, they have fixed the problem. So if you buy a wheel now that is not from the first batch, you should be good. But yeah, I'd say we'll quickly reattach the funky knob and the 5 screws. One thing maybe, you need to be really careful with these screws. The black paint is very sensitive. I'm using a high quality iFixit screwdriver, but already, even though I'm really careful since this is a loaner unit, you can see the black paint going away. But yeah, just be careful and then it shouldn't be a big problem. If it goes too silver, you can always use a black marker to make it black again. Oh, now we have a problem again. The Mark button is also one of them that will be stuck. So not ideal. I guess they noticed it after the first batch has been out, but still it's not ideal. As you can see, I can't. You can push this, but this one is stuck on the one position. Anyways, shouldn't be a problem anymore on the newer batches. The buttons itself look very nice. I definitely prefer this over stickers, even though stickers are definitely easier to swap around and put on. But this is a really good alternative while still maintaining the customizability. Then on the front, we also have 4 thumb rotaries. These are Elma rotaries. They feel very good. Resistance is nice and tactile. They are embedded into the body, and the position of the colored ones The lower ones here are very good. The top ones I think are slightly too close to the button. I've had it happen that I wanted to turn these and accidentally pushed this button and was on the pit limiter. But honestly, once you get used to how you have to grab them, it's not a big deal. Then we also get 2 rotary switches that you unfortunately cannot switch into encoder mode. So it makes them a little bit useless, at least for me if you're doing iRacing, because every position is a button. You can, for example, use this to assign this to black boxes, for example. But if you just want to increase brake bias or traction control, unless you want to do fixed presets, it's not possible with this. You can probably use a little bit of logic and auto hotkey to make this happen, but still out of the box, you cannot use them as rotary encoders in an increment-decrement way. However, there's one functionality that is pretty nice if you like to have tons of encoders on your wheel. It's called a shift function, and basically it will make the thumb rotary have different button numbers depending on the position of the switch. So let's say you set this to 1 and then you can adjust the traction control with this, set this to 2, then you can adjust the ABS. So there are definitely tons of inputs on this wheel. I do miss normal front encoders. I always prefer those over thumb rotaries, but I think the majority actually prefers thumb rotaries, so that's probably more a me problem. And then we also have 2 funky switches in a good position, very nice to reach while driving. Then if we look at the back side, it gets very, very busy. We have tons of switches and 6 pedals and everything. This top module here is a dual shifter module, like with 4 shifters, 2 on each side. Whole assembly is made out of aluminum and it does feel very, very good. There are dampers on both directions. The release is slightly loud, but the pull is relatively quiet. The bottom shifters have an activation force of 7 Newton. The top shifters an activation force of roughly 9 Newton because it's a little bit closer, shorter lever. And adjustability is, well, nothing. You can't adjust anything on these shifters. So basically take the wheel out of the box. If it works for you, good. And if not, you're kind of out of luck. Ergonomically, it works for me, but there isn't a lot of space. In general, I think Ascher wheels are probably made for smaller hands, but we'll talk about that later. The clutches also feel very good. They have tons of travel. Adjusting bite point is a little pain, but that's because of the SimCube wireless module they used. It just it doesn't communicate the current bite point, so you have to awkwardly hold the slave clutch and then try to adjust it with the funky switches. And then you need an overlay on your monitor or your dashboard, otherwise you just don't know what you're doing. This is not ideal, but it's not Ascher Racing's fault. On the clutches, you do have 2 fixed positions to mount the pedal to the clutch body. But that's it with adjustability. There's nearly no play on the shifters or clutches. This is done really, really good. And the technology being used is contactless Hall sensors for all 6 of the shifters and clutches. Then we do have a 70mm pattern to mount the QR. We have 3 threaded holes and 3 non-threaded holes. I actually think this is a very good idea. Everybody should do it like that, because then you don't have to get captive screws if you mount a QR like this from the inside, for example. I think this is a very good idea, and you definitely do not need more than 3 screws to attach your QR. We do also have 5 mini switches on the back that lets you turn on and off the wheel, turn on off the LEDs, go into that LED adjustment mode where you can toggle through brightness and presets using these buttons, for example. And then you also have this shift mode for the rotary switches, which I never used. Then there also is a USB-C. You see that is attached to my QR here right now, but you use that to charge the wheel. Talking of charging the wheel, this is a wireless wheel, but unfortunately with the older tech that requires a SimCube base to use and not the new SimCube Link stuff. I've never been a big fan of proprietary wireless systems, to be honest. Why not just use Bluetooth like VRS or Cube controls? But on the plus side, Ascher put a lot of effort into reducing the power consumption of this wheel and claims that the wheel can run up to 800 hours on one charge. With the LEDs turned off though. This gets reduced significantly to 30 hours if you actually use the LEDs. And charging the wheel takes about 6 hours, but you can also use it while charging. In general, I'm personally not a huge fan of wireless wheels. A cable never really bothered me personally, but charging a wheel and then thinking how much battery do I have left would annoy me personally. So what I actually did is I modified the wheel to use my custom quick release that has USB and power in the QR itself, and basically I attached a short USB-C cable to the charging port, routed that to the USB port in the QR, and then I don't have to worry about charging the battery. And the other benefit of doing that is I just wrote my own firmware for the LED interface here so that I can actually use this wheel with SimHub and full telemetry support. I might post that firmware file on my Discord, but keep in mind if you mess something up, I'm not responsible for warranty stuff, so do that at your own risk. Let's talk about ergonomics next. If you like the old F64 or F24 Ascher wheels, you will like this one. The grips feel pretty much the same to me. I don't know if there's any difference. The grips are also very small and, in my opinion, more suited for smaller hands. I've always struggled a little bit with Ascher wheels that are closed on the bottom because I think this bottom cutout is a little bit small, like I can't really grab this super comfortably. I mean, it's okay, I adjust it after some time and just hold the wheel differently, but with every Ascher wheel, I just wish there was a little bit more space here. But ergonomics and hand shapes, it's a very subjective thing. Diameter of the wheel is 300mm, in my opinion, the perfect sweet spot for pretty much any car. Typically, I would talk about software next, but there is absolutely no software for this wheel. I mean, you can statically adjust the colors via SimHub, that's it. Then, of course, I had a look at the electronics. I mean, I'm always curious what the competition is doing. And also, I just had to because I wanted to attach the QR from the inside. And I can tell you the electronics are done very, very well. It's a lot of clever ideas in this wall. There are a lot of clever ideas in this wheel. I mean, it's pretty much one giant board that has the buttons and a little Arduino for the LED control. And then on top of that, there's a SimCube module. And especially the mechanism they use for the LEDs is pretty clever. I haven't seen that before. They use like a little mini PCB that acts like a bridge over the button that has the LED, and then the button itself goes on top of that. I'm gonna add a picture here and post on the video so you can see it, but never seen that before. It's probably a pain on assembly because there's a lot of stuff going on in this wheel. I wouldn't want to assemble that, but the idea is really very good. And in general, the wheel is pretty complex on the inside. There are several PCBs in different layers, like different heights, because like the rotary switch has a different height than the funky switch, and then the LEDs again in a different height. So a lot of stuff going on there. And I guess it takes a little bit of time to put these together. But yeah, in general, I couldn't really find anything on the inside that I could criticize. On the track, I think this wheel performs very well with the lots of inputs that you have in direct reach on the top half here. 300mm will work fine with pretty much any car, I think. And to sum it up, I think the Ascher Artura Pro is an excellent steering wheel that is held back a little bit by the use of the SimCube wireless module. It's just not up to modern standards like static LED lights and no rotary mode for the switches. I think the competition does it a little bit better. Cube Controls, for example, has Bluetooth wireless that works as well, supports every base, and can do dynamic SimHub telemetry LEDs. But I think the strongest competitor is probably the Grid MPX wheel, which is also an excellent wheel and suits my hands a little bit better, even though it also has very small grips, but it's just more space for your hands. But subjectively, I think the McLaren wheel is quite a bit prettier. I like this minimalistic look. Or another option that you can maybe consider if you like this type of wheel is the Hyper SL. But it's quite a bit more expensive than the Ascher, has a few more features, but it's also a nice alternative if you're looking for this type of wheel. So overall, I definitely can recommend this wheel if you do not have giant hands, but I wouldn't personally get the wireless version. I would wait till the USB version is available. In my opinion, wireless doesn't really add any value to a steering wheel, and if the USB version will be the same price and works just as well, it's pretty much a no-brainer for me. You will not have to worry about battery life. You have telemetry support for the LEDs, and like I said, I personally was never bothered by having a cable. So yeah, if you have any questions, leave a comment down below, and while you're there, maybe leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to not miss any future videos. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.